Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Stewart. I'm with Impact Nations. And as many of you will know, we are now at the beginning of Holy Week or Passion Week, depending on your tradition. And it it is generally accepted that it begins with the Triumphal Entry or Palm Sunday and finishes with the Resurrection. I've decided I want to each day do a short bit of teaching or devotional on different aspects of this. Today, I'm actually going one day before Holy Week to the anointing at Bethany. Tomorrow, we'll look at uh, the triumphal entry. I want to look at the Last Supper. I want to look at the Garden of Gethsemane and, of course, the Crucifixion, Holy Saturday, and Resurrection Sunday. So we're now coming into, as I said, one day before, but the final week of Jesus' life. And in this episode, this teaching on the anointing at Bethany, we have Jesus returning to one of his favorite places. We see again and again him going to a little town. Some say it's almost like what we would consider a subdivision now of Jerusalem called Bethany. And he's returning again to the home of his beloved friends, Simon and Martha and Mary and Lazarus, who was raised from the dead. Um, the home he's called Simon the leper. Isn't that interesting? Not just Simon, but it's likely that Jesus had healed Simon sometime before this, but the name stuck. He was healed, but there's still sort of a stigma. You know, it's interesting because Bethany literally means the house of affliction or the house of poor. And historians think that this was one of perhaps three locations in Israel that were like a modern sanatorium where people could come because they were sick or the desperately poor could come for alms. And it's this town that's a special place for Jesus. Um, Now, as Jesus is there, and we have this wonderful scene of Mary and Martha and Lazarus and all around him, they're like his family to him. This house of affliction now becomes a house of blessing, a house of restoration and healing, because this is the very place where Lazarus is now. So suddenly in the scene, Mary comes in and she comes with a jar of incredibly expensive ointment or perfume. It was likely either a family heirloom or maybe even her dowry. It was remarkably expensive, and it represented her security. It represented her whole future. And as she takes it, and the alabaster jar was kind of smallish jar with a long neck, and the only way to open it was to break it off. And as she breaks this open, she is expressing her heartfelt adoration and love with all that she had. Because again, this was the most valuable thing that Mary had. It's interesting. She hadn't even used um, this fragrance on on Lazarus when he died. Alabaster jars couldn't be resealed. It was an abandoned giving of everything that she had. And then it says that she wiped his feet with her hair. And in the 21st century, we can hardly understand how incredible this was, because it was scandalous, really. A woman's hair was her glory, and it was never let down outside of her own bedroom. And so for her to do that in front of everyone was incredibly vulnerable. And it opened her to misunderstanding and to criticism. But there's a principle here for us today. The vessel has to be broken for the fragrance to be released. Christ is released in our lives through brokenness. And the house was filled, it says, with the fragrance of this incredible anointing oil. A favorite passage of mine is in 2 Corinthians 2:14 and 15. Let me read this. God uses us to spread his knowledge everywhere like a sweet smelling perfume. Our offering to God is this: we are the sweet smell of Christ among those who are being saved and among those who are being lost. The fragrance that came from Mary's offering touched everyone in the room. So what happens? Well, in one version it says the disciples, in another it says Judas said, "Why are you doing this? This is so wasteful. This is so impractical. This is so over the top." And but Jesus protects Mary. He says, "Don't criticize her for this. Why are you bothering this woman?" He goes on to say, as long as the gospel is preached, what she has done will be remembered. He's protecting her from the disciples, and he is confirming her dignity. Jesus' reception of Mary's over-the-top kind of gesture demonstrates something. It's his sensitivity to her. He doesn't care how others are responding. He is fully receiving this. And, the others thought this was foolish, but he says, no, this is beautiful. It'll be remembered forever. Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, he said, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things to shame the strong. He chose what the world thinks is unimportant and what the world looks down on and thinks is nothing in order to destroy what the world thinks is important. I just want to make a couple of points and then we're done. What I give to Jesus is a true reflection of his worth to me, how centered my life is on him. The second point is this: the fragrance of worship changes the atmosphere. We're coming into this last week of Lent. It's a time of real contemplation on the Lord and a time of adoration. And he wants us to know that the fragrance of worship doesn't just change us, it changes the whole atmosphere. And the last thing is, when we hear this, we extravagance always leads to misunderstanding. It's like it's offensive to some people. And when we hear someone or some group say, "Why are you doing this?" Or when they say what you're doing is a waste of your time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of talent. We need to remember Mary and remember Jesus in his response and defense of Mary, and ask when we hear those kinds of questions, is this the gospel of Christ, or is this the gospel of Judas, the gospel of criticism? Tomorrow we're going to go and look at the Triumphal Entry, which is incredibly powerful. It's filled with all kinds of prophetic meaning, and it sets Jesus and his followers apart from the world in as clear and defined a way as I can think of in the Gospels. God bless you. Have a great day.